9 p.m. Two for one night at Bacchus. We should go down, George proposed, her eyes bright with anticipation. I, however, wasn't as enthused. I was working another shift in the morning, and I'd have to walk again, as I was skint. The £5 in my pocket had to get me through the 3 remaining days it would take for my paycheck to arrive. Even when it did come, it was already spent, on food and my portion of the rent. In short, even if I could go, I didn't have the budget for recreation. This was my life since I left Trinidad. I can't go. I have work in the morning. Again? Not a great way to spend the summer. Is unnecessary evil. You can still come. Beau will be there, she added, hoping to coax me. She not on me, I offered, damply. She real like ya, George responded. In the year we had known each other, she made it her mission to master Trini dialect. I played along. I have things to do. Like what, horse? Just things, I said, as I turned toward my laptop to continue my job search. All right, mate, she replied in defeat. You go take one for me, right? I offered in consolation. No scene, she replied. Soon, George left for her night of bacchanalia, and I retreated to the kitchen. There, I set about trying to make a potato, the last edible thing I had in the cupboard, resemble an actual meal. As I cut it in half and placed it in the oven, I wondered if I had indeed gone mad. I was on my way up. Good job, nice car, parties, women, the things they say every young man needs. However, I remained unconvinced that this hollow lifestyle was for me. Somewhere between the debauchery and my desire for meaning came the decision to give into my filmmaking dreams. Perhaps within that medium, I would find the fulfillment I sorely lacked. Where I came from, though, there were no film schools or even an industry to speak of. I had to leave to live the dream. London became my destination, mainly because the residue of colonialism made my academic qualifications compatible. Besides that, the independent scene of Europe held more appeal to me than the glamour of Hollywood. Why you don't try to settle down instead? Was my mother's reaction to my plan, her desire for grandbabies overwhelming all else. Real gills when they reach over there, boy, was all Vic, my regular drinking partner, could see. Neither of them knew that I had spent a year preparing for my move. If I sold the car, cashed in the insurance policies, got that student loan, and saved all I could, I would have enough for my ticket, student visa, and 2 of the 3 years' tuition I required. To finance my final year, I'd find a part-time job. Surely, if I worked and saved as much as humanly possible, a 2-year buffer would be more than enough to secure the cash I needed. Thus far, though, I had saved a grand total of 0. My train of thought was interrupted by the smell of a burning potato. Shit! After a minor rescue operation involving precision scraping and dabs of margarine, the charcoal-flavored spud became something palatable. I should be grateful, I thought. After all, there were folks in the world with nothing. At least I had a roof over my head and a morsel to quell the rage within my stomach. I still had hope. In a few years, I'd undoubtedly look back and smile at how far I had come. Hunger is just part of the process, I thought, as I took my first bite. My stomach rumbled in agreement. 3 a.m. The loud moaning and rhythmic thuds against my wall indicated that George's night was only just beginning. I couldn't be too mad, really. She did agree to take one for me, and I didn't make it clear that I was talking about beer. As she asked God not to stop, I pulled my pillow tight over my head. Based on my own experience with alcohol-fueled relations, though, there was equal chance of her stud lasting till the sun came up, and him falling asleep mid-coitus. Maybe I'd get lucky and they would both pass out soon. Whatever the case, I had to be out of the house by 7 if I was going to get to the bookshop on time. As I lay there, I wondered if she understood the opportunity she had by way of birth. It wasn't that government-assisted tuition gave her an advantage. We had that back home. In fact, in becoming an international student, I was giving up my subsidy. What was lost in a financial sense, though, was gained in the range of academic choices that was suddenly available. I suppose that colonial wealth and social problems that didn't include a spiraling murder rate afforded this society time for trivial matters like film or medieval studies. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't naive enough to think that the streets of England were paved in gold, but I knew that here it was possible for me to at least study what I really loved. That was the narrative I sold myself at least, and as it circled around my head to the tune of drunken lust, I found myself aroused and very jealous. I mean, if I was going to have a shitty day at work due to sleep deprivation, I might as well be having sex. Of course, I could just walk over there and ask them to keep it down, but my growing bulge would only make that awkward. Soon my hand had found its way into my pants. Well, why not? I reasoned. 7:30 a.m. To anyone who has not had a good night's rest, the sound of an alarm is the most annoying thing in the world. To anyone who had to work in retail after such a night, it is the most aggravating, rage-inducing sound in the cosmos. It is with these things in mind that I had earlier made the decision to slap the clock off the bedside table. At the time, I didn't think much of the splintery crash. Now that I was a half hour behind schedule, I was beginning to regret my impulses. My remorse came to a head when, in a hurried attempt to get into my work trousers, I landed on some of the shrapnel. As the blood began to seep through my nylon sock, I didn't feel any pain. Instead, I remembered something my mother would always say: more haste, less speed. She was seldom wrong about these things. A wet wipe, a bandage, and 10 minutes later, I was limping toward the front door. It was there that I saw George's stud attempting to make a stealthy exit. As he tugged and tugged at the handle, he did not seem to realize that he needed a key. Although that in itself was disturbing, I understood his urge to leave. In the not-too-distant past, but perhaps less awkwardly, I too had done the Navy SEAL. Get in, conquer, and get out, never to be seen again. Not something I was particularly proud of, in truth. You all right there, pal? I asked. He spun around with a start, as I raised a judgmental eyebrow. Sorry, Blood. I'm George's mate. Didn't want to wake her as I left, he explained nervously, as he stepped on some mail that had been gathering beneath the slot in the door. The way the envelopes lay strewn about the hallway, one might conclude that George and I were building some kind of nest. Yeah, sure, I replied, as I held up my keys. His face lit up. You're a legend, mate. So are you, from what I've heard, I mumbled. What was that? Nothing, just thinking aloud. A few seconds of awkward silence followed as I released the locks and pushed open the door, offering him the freedom he craved. You off to work? His fraudulent interest in my life made me dislike him just a little bit more. Yep. Not a great way to spend the summer. Yeah, that's what it tell me. With that, he jumped into his car and sped off, leaving a wake of exhaust and obnoxious music behind. Meanwhile, my attention turned toward the trampled mail at my feet. There was one envelope that seemed important, the words "date-sensitive material" stamped on it in red ink. I broke the seal to reveal a letter from the university. 2:15 p.m. When charged with collecting, counting, and dispensing tender, one can see just how much money the business makes during the hours one spends working. With a few simple calculations, if one was so inclined, one could then extrapolate how much the business had made from one's labor in a week, a month, a year, and so on. Thusly, as one stands at the till, one cannot help but feel, quite literally, shortchanged. It is for this reason, I reckon, that of all the jobs in the overworked and underpaid world of retail, cashing is most akin to hell. After receiving that correspondence from the university, hell was particularly hot. £3.20? The frumpy old woman asked incredulously, her seasoned frown mirroring a salted prune. Yes, ma'am, I responded, blankly confirming what she already knew. Can't believe that price, she muttered as she handed me a $5. I can't believe it either, I thought, as I took the bill to make change. Of course, I was not referring to the price of stationery, but to the whopping 50% increase in tuition that I suddenly faced. The news had reduced my long walk to work to a desperate exercise in number crunching. Regardless of how I spun the figures, though, It was painfully obvious that I would not be able to continue my education. In one move, my plan had been derailed. And yet, here I was, facing these customers, holding on to the fading embers of my dream. As the absurdity of it hit me, I froze, dropping the $5 on the counter. "Are you all right?" the frumpy woman asked, undoubtedly disturbed by my sudden change in demeanor. "Horse, I real good," I replied with finality, before making my way to the door. The look of shock on the manager's face as I limped out onto the street did not matter. The only thing that was of consequence was the epiphany that I was having, that in my search for meaning, I had ended up trading one shitstem for another. While they were both different, they were also the same, demanding me to know and take my place. Maybe over the last year, some kind of inferiority complex had allowed me to reconcile the hunger, the debt, and the shifting goalposts I faced by being here. But now, my eyes were wide open. Unlike Lord Kitchener, London was not the place for me. 8:30 p.m. The crowd at Bacchus was thin, even for a weeknight. I didn't mind though. It gave me a chance to actually check out the place I had heard so many stories about. It was a bit of a dive in truth, but amidst the chatter, punk rock, and cigarette smoke, I found a strange calm. I began to understand why she liked coming here. "This is where you met him?" I asked, perplexed that the high-strung stud would frequent such a place. "Nah, I found him at the mill," George explained. "You should leave him there too," I insisted. "So you don't think he'll call then?" she responded, the irony in her voice unmistakable. "If he does, run. Run like the swiftest wind," I advised, in my best Shakespearean tone. Our laughter soon dissipated into a somber silence. After a moment of deliberation, George broke the deadlock. "So when do you leave?" "Don't know. Maybe the end of the month," I replied. "Honestly, I don't blame you. This place kind of sucks." "I had a plan though," I offered meekly. "Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the mouth," she offered in return. "Who said that?" I asked, amused at the crude but incredibly apt philosophy. "Mike Tyson," she laughed. "Well, here lie," I concluded, as I raised my pint to hers.